So we've officially entered 2024, and I think it's time we stop looking back on 2023 and look forward and see what's coming up to look forward to. Last year I did a top 10, and this year I'm doing a top 20 with 10 honorable mentions. Now, a lot of these are technically 2023 releases due to film festivals screening them, but I don't count film festivals as proper releases, I'm only counting wide releases. Our top 10 will cover most of the big releases you're expecting, but we do have some lesser known movies before then, and the reason behind there being so many honorable mentions is that we know next to nothing about these, some of them not even being for certain 2024 releases, just most likely. So let's run through those 10 honorable mentions really quickly now. At 30 we have the new Lord of the Rings movie, The War of Rohirrim? I don't know how to say that, which I'm massively hesitant on because Peter Jackson isn't directing it, but also I'm quite excited because Peter Jackson isn't directing it. But the main draw of this is obviously Brian Cox in the lead. I'll watch anything with our Lord and Saviour Logan Roy. Then we have Terrifier 3. I haven't seen Terrifier 2 at this point, but I will by this time next year, and hey, Terrifier 3 is a Christmas movie. At 28 is About Dry Grasses, which is a Turkish film that I basically know nothing about, but the teaser looks good, it's vibey, and it's a story about a teacher allegedly grooming a student, which is fun enough material for some good performances. Then Chime, which is the newest film from Kiyoshi Kurosawa, director of Cure, one of the best directors ever and one of the best movies ever made, so yeah, that's all I know about this movie, but I'm strapped in for it. And at 26 we have Dracula. Yeah, apparently Chloe Zhao, director of Eternals and Nomadland, is taking a crack at Dracula, so why not throw it in here? Should be interesting. I think it's meant to be a sci-fi western take, it sounds intriguing. Then 25 is Mother Mary, and all we know about this is that it's a musical drama starring Anne Hathaway from David Lowery, director of The Green Knight, so I think if anything we'll at least have some very nice aesthetics. Then we have Solo, a French-Canadian film from Sophie Dupuis about a drag queen and some drama with his mother, and I'm not too sure about anything else. It's getting good reviews, it won some awards, and from the looks of the trailer it's going to be a very dramatic and colourful movie in more than just the visuals. 23 is Egghead and Twinkie, which is just a fun teen road trip movie about a lesbian protagonist, which is also the plot of another film coming up later on. The trailer looks interesting, but it isn't enough to gauge quality, just has a lot of potential. 22 is The Bike Riders. I don't actually much care about this film, but it'll be interesting to see why this has been cancelled and then revived and sold. Just why has it been so hard to market an Austin Butler and Tom Hardy film about bike riders? And finally, the last of the honorable mentions is Frankenstein, which doesn't have a confirmed date. I'm just very hopeful of a 2024 one, but it's Guillermo del Toro doing Frankenstein, which is a dream pitch, honestly. Then you throw in Mia Goth, Oscar Isaac, Andrew Garfield, and Christoph Waltz. This is ready to be an all-timer. Anyway, now that they're done and out the way, onto the real list. At 20 we have Drive Away Dolls, which is going to be Ethan Coen's solo debut. And if you're unaware, Ethan Coen is one half of the Coen brothers who made classics like No Country for Old Men, The Big Lebowski, and Oh Brother Where Art Thou? And since Joel Coen, the other half, has only had one solo release, being The Tragedy in Macbeth, which is incredible by the way, it's going to be interesting to see how the brothers really differ when this finally releases. Also, this is starring Margaret Qualley as our protagonist, who's the other lesbian in a road trip movie I was talking about earlier. And like I said during my Sanctuary segment in my top 50 of 2023, she's due to be a superstar soon. She has unreal charisma, and I think pairing her with one half of the Coen brothers is great, and yeah, I just think the film looks like goofy fun. Then at 19 we have Spaceman, meaning the Sandman is back. Adam Sandler in another Netflix movie, but this time as an astronaut who is having some kind of existential crisis about his marriage whilst on a journey across the stars, where Paul Dano plays some sort of ancient mysterious creature that helps him, and I guess Carey Mulligan plays the estranged wife. Not much else is known, but I'm down for Adam Sandler to have an emotional crisis whilst Paul Dano plays some sort of goblin creature in a cool sci-fi movie from the guy behind Chernobyl. Next up is Gladiator 2, which you'd expect to be much higher, but I'd like to take this time to say I'm not the hugest fan of Gladiator. Granted, I haven't seen it in a while, but I'm very much down for a new Ridley Scott epic set in that world in that time. Also, it's starring Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, and Matt Lucas, but I don't know, not much else is really known about this. It could be great, but it also could be awful, who knows, that's how Ridley Scott just goes, but I'm excited. Then at 17 we have Handling the Undead, which is a Norwegian horror film about some kind of electromagnetic shock that reawakens the dead in some kind of mass Frankenstein crisis, and though I'm not hugely familiar with the Norwegian film industry, I'm excited to delve a bit deeper into it, and this seems like a great place to start. It has a great premise that reminds me a lot of Pet Sematary, and the trailer is haunting, and it gives me everything I need to see without giving me too much. At 16 there's Hope, which is another film we know an incredible little about, but it's a Korean sci-fi thriller by Na Hong Jin, who directed The Wailing, which is famously my favourite foreign horror film, and I'll watch anything he makes. It's also starring Jung Ho Yeon, who made a splash in Squid Game and was easily my favourite part of it, and as for the rest of the cast, we have very notable people, including weirdly Michael Fassbender. So yeah, given the director and the cast, this is guaranteed to be a heater despite the very vague synopsis currently given. Then entering the top 15 we have Problemista, which is a directorial debut from Julio Torres, and it follows an immigrant worker whose work visa is running out. So he has no choice but to take a job with Tilda Swinton, who seems to actually be doing a unique character for once. As much as I love her, she's always doing the Tilda Swinton thing, but here, there actually seems to be some character work happening. It also features RZA apparently, and also Greta Lee of Past Lives fame, which I loved, so cast-wise, I'm in. But also the trailer looks phenomenal. It appears to have a very unique visual style that I hope actually carries into the movie. Moving on, we have a sort of double-barreled 14th spot. One is Evil Does Not Exist, which was on my list for last year, but I didn't realise it doesn't come out until this year. But it's a Japanese film, gorgeous shots in the trailer, has a good amount of intrigue, and I'm also going to throw Late Night with the Devil in this slot as well, which is cheating, but this was also on my list for last year that wasn't due for release until this year, but that also looks phenomenal. Anyway, number 13 we have I Used to Be Funny, which is the feature-length debut from Ali Pinku, who most recently directed the Joan is Awful Black Mirror episode that got talked about a lot. But most notably, the film stars Rachel Sennott, who I have a huge love for despite not loving Bottoms last year. She's a great comedic talent, but also has huge dramatic potential, and I think this is the film where she's going to find the best balance of those qualities. It's about a young stand-up comedian suffering from PTSD who gets a job as an au pair. There's comedy, drama, and mystery, all the elements of a good movie. Next up is Sing Sing, starring Coleman Domingo, who should be much bigger than he is, but hopefully this gives him a bit more shine. It's a film featuring former inmates of Sing Sing Correctional Facility, which has a fascinating history, and the film centers around that prison as well as the rehabilitation through the arts program which started there. I think given the huge history behind the prison and the program itself, not to mention the actual inmates being a part of the film, this has the potential to be a very powerful piece. And the score is even being composed by Bryce Dessner, who has a brilliant track record, especially with his score for 2021's Come On Come On. Then just missing the top 10 we have our first major release, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, which has one of the dumbest names I've ever heard. It absolutely could have just been Furiosa or Mad Max Furiosa, but whatever. This has one of the best trailers I've seen in a very long time, and it's a sequel to one of the best action films of the 21st century. It stars Anya Taylor-Joy, who we all love, and it also stars Chris Hemsworth, looking almost unrecognizable and appears to be doing what I think is called acting, which is a foreign concept to him these days, but glad to see him returning to that. Also, I'm a big fan of them recasting these characters instead of trying to de-age them or whatever. It's a good decision and signs of a good vision. I hope this is great, and it would be top 10, but I'm just more excited for these others a bit more. Oh, and did you guys notice that Anya is on this poster twice? I wonder what intern got fired for that mistake. Anyway, top 10 we have Hitman, which is Richard Linklater's latest and is basically the story of an undercover cop on the run helping an abused woman, and the on-the-run stories are always fun, aren't they? Especially when being written and directed by one of cinema's greatest gifts. Plus, it's starring Glenn Powell, who's gearing up to be a great leading man in Hollywood. I hope it's as good as its crew has you believe. Then at 9 we have Mickey 17, which is Bong Joon-ho's anticipated release, as he finally follows up his Oscar winner Parasite with a new original movie starring Robert Pattinson and also Toni Collette, Stephen Yeun, and Mark Ruffalo. It's about a space expedition with the goal of colonizing an ice planet called Niflheim, and seeing Bong Joon-ho tackling sci-fi to this extent is super interesting. My main concern is that this release is in like 3 months, and yet there's still no trailer or any word on it at all we have is this image and teaser I've been staring at for like a year, but regardless, I have huge faith in my boys Bong Joon-ho and Robert Pattinson. At 8, we have Megalopolis, which is a film that is coming out in 2024. I can't take people telling me it's not coming out this year. It's coming out this year, okay? And this would be in the honorable mentions given how little we actually know about it, but what I do know warrants a top 10 space, okay? Which is that it's Francis Ford Coppola's return to the director's chair on a sci-fi film he wrote about the rebuilding of a new New York City whilst boasting a cast of Adam Driver, Natalie Emmanuel, Lawrence Fishburne, Giancarlo Esposito, Talia Shire, Aubrey Plaza, Forrest Whitaker, Jason Schwartzman, Dustin Hoffman and more. It's a ridiculous cast of actors with a GOAT contender director putting the rest together. Please come out this year. At 7, we have the long-awaited Dune Part 2. It still really hurts this didn't hit in November, but regardless, I'm still excited for this, as is, I assume, everybody. I don't really need to say why, but I still can't believe Denis Villeneuve has made Dune a historically difficult book series to get into, a widely accessible sci-fi epic. The first is due a rewatch from me, but I really hope this lives up to expectations. The trailer looks incredible, and yeah, I'm excited. At 6, we have The Book of Clarence, which is set in Jerusalem in 33 AD, and is a story about a man trying to deify himself to escape his tragic life full of debt, and I think it will ultimately have a lot to say on the topic of things like false prophets and the weight we put into messiahs and how easy it is to create your own mythos. It has a good cast with Lakeith Stanfield at its center, who is a generational talent, and I just have the feeling this will be a deceptively comedic film with a lot more going on than just that. Sadly, it didn't hit my top 5 because at 5 we have Nosferatu, a remake of the godfather of vampire films from 1922, and it's gonna be directed by Robert Eggers, which is up there with Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein with Dream Pictures. I could not pick a better director for this project. It is literally so perfect. It's insane to think it's actually happening. I think he'll bring a beautiful touch of that German expressionism along with his own style in this super gothic movie that will be no doubt incredible. I mean, it stars Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok and Willem Dafoe and Aaron Taylor Johnson, Nicholas Hoult, and every look of this film we've had is exceptional. Mwah, chef's kiss, it's gonna be good. Then at 4 we have Alien Romulus, which is just kind of a made up title. It's technically still untitled, but I am ridiculously hyped for this. I think about this movie every other day and all the possibilities that come along with it. It's starring Kaylee Spaney, who recently starred in Priscilla, which made it to my top 50 last year, and even stars David Johnson, who starred in my favourite of last year, Rye Lane. But I think the most exciting part of this is Fede Alvarez coming on to direct, who is one of the most visually identifiable directors in horror currently working. His work on Don't Breathe and 2013's Evil Dead is hugely underrated, especially the latter, and I hope he brings back some true horror themes to this franchise that have been missing since maybe the first film. I hear Ridley Scott has already seen it and that he likes it. It's apparently set in between Alien and Aliens, but not much else is known about the film except that. It's going to be a standalone story, unattached to the rest of the franchise, which is great for potential. However, I do kind of wish this film took place on LV-426 and centered around the Hadley Hope colony that all died before the events of Aliens. I think there's potential there, but I'm happy with whatever Alvarez is cooking. Then entering our top 3, finally we have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which went from one of my least anticipated movies of this year to number 3 given one piece of information, and that was the general premise. When this film was announced, I was worried they were going to latch on this unnecessary installment on an already perfect trilogy, and this would play as an epilogue to Caesar's story that nobody wanted. But when I saw the trailer and heard that this is set 300 years after the events of War for the Planet of the Apes, and the characters have no idea who Caesar is, and it's the start of a new trilogy and not an addition to the last, I thought 2 things. 1, wow, these apes suck at record keeping. They can speak and have society, but they couldn't account for the one ape that started their whole existence just a mere 300 years ago. And the second thing was, thank God. This looks insane, and I'm so excited for another installment in this franchise, and at least if it sucks, it doesn't taint the trilogy that came before, which was my main worry. At second, we have The Iron Claw, and now yes, this is technically a 2023 release given its wide release, but it doesn't release here until Feb, so I'm counting it for this list, which I suppose also works for Poor Things and The Zone of Interest too, but mostly for this. I will say though, when I see it, I will be adding it to my 2023 list and not my 2024 one, because it's not this film's fault that A24 sucks at international distribution. But anyway, this film looks absolutely jacked, as well as the cast. Zac Efron is apparently sensational. I have a love for Jeremy Allen White that cannot be explained in human words. Plus, the story of the Von Erichs is so tragic and one that near any wrestling fan is all too familiar with, and I don't know if I'm prepared to see this movie in all honesty. It's crushing me just thinking about it, and that's why it's number 2. But finally, our number 1 is Maxine, the long awaited, and by that I mean 2 years, sequel to X and Pearl, and will be concluding the X trilogy. I don't have many reasons to why I'm excited, just a few that are super powerful. 1, X and Pearl are 2 of my favourite films ever made. 2, this is set in the 80s, which is a great decade for an X story, and 3, it stars Mia Goth and frickin' Giancarlo Esposito, who's apparently gonna have a very busy year next year. Also, as I said, I've been waiting 2 years on this one, and I'm just ready for it now. And I suppose that's it. I mean, there's tons of films coming out this year that I didn't get to, but these are just the 30 I'm personally most excited about, and I think you guys should be looking out for them too. I know I didn't speak about every single one of them in that much detail, but that's just because there's so many of them, and we just simply don't know that much about any of them either. But I think we have a lot of exciting directors and writers and actors working on interesting premises this year, and let's be honest, 2023 was honestly such a high overall. It was an exceptional year for film, and I can only hope that 2024 is half as good, so here's to hoping it is. So, whether it's an anticipated 2024 release or not, as always, keep watching movies.